Just remember, we will not go down.
Now, so if we were to talk about colonialism, Mheshimiwa, kindly just expound to us what has happened to Palestine, because if you look at, for example, the ethnic cleansing, a book that has been written by Professor Ilan Pape, he says that it is a conviction of the author that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine indeed took place in 1947, 1948. Kindly.
Yes, let me start with a definition of a very common word that we all got used to in the last couple of years, Zionism.
No.
Because it's the root of what we call the settler colonialists in the occupied Palestinian territories that is now called Israel.
No.
This is a nationalist ideology.
No.
Which called for the creation of a Jewish state. And this movement and its progeny, which is now called the State of Israel, it represents what they would call the national liberation, a chance for the Jews to have what they call a homeland, in what they always refer to as Israel, which is a occupation of Palestinian territory at the expense of the Palestinians and the Arab population. And this, going back from the time when the British came up with the Balfour, but I think even before that, I look at three reasons why the whole idea of even the Balfour and even the creation of this Zionist state in occupied Palestine came up. First, I think in the early 1900s in Europe, the growth and expansion of European imperialism, and the search for new sources of raw materials created this, identified markets such as the Arab lands, which they found to be a gateway to Africa and also a bridge to Asia. This Arab territory. And at the same time, there was quite a bit of Arab nationalism at the time that Western countries wanted to strive for. The second is the failure of the European liberalism. All these things about equality and democracy had failed in the beginning of 1990s, and they failed to incorporate and assimilate the Jews. And so what happened, thirdly, is the spread of this aggressive and chauvinistic Western nationalism in Europe, which stressed the issue of racism or racial superiority. And this precipitated by the push for Europe to embrace the Zionist ideology, so that these people, because there was no time, let me say, Jews were always defined in Europe. They were considered irrevocably to be outside the Christian Europe. They were not considered to be they were excluded fundamentally from being European nations. So Jews were that, and this is why over hundreds of years Jews had been persecuted in many of these European countries. You remember in Russia, in Spain, in France, there has been so many, and including Germany, the latest one in the 1940 Hitler's time. And so these are the things which precipitated the push for a homeland for these guys out of Europe. And so when the West today does what it's doing, it's like trying to pay for their crimes in the past. And so Zionism today is really is a violent settler colonialism, which is driven by this nationalism, this secular nationalism of many of these people. But four things clearly which I find to drive this thing is one of them, and which some of the many people in the West, particularly in the US, Christians, buy into, is that Jews are God's chosen people. That's one of the things that they believe. Two, that Palestine is the chosen land, is the promised land of the Jews.
Yes.
And thirdly, especially the evangelists and many of these Christians believe that the Messianic period is coming, and these things which are happening are a build-up to that. And lastly, they also believe that all non-Jews are evil. If you look at all the writings of the Jews
Yeah.
in the Talmuds and all these things. They believe all these people were non-Jews. So this has created quite a bit of a situation where even the Orthodox Jews find Zionism to be a violent ideology. Where now they believe what is happening is it's a colonial imperialism. People are determined to take this land and force out all the Palestinians out of their land. This is the situation in which, unfortunately, we've seen. So the occupation, which has mutated into apartheid, because there's a dual legal system and policy system in the country that discriminates against the Palestinians and gives superiority to the Jews, and so forth. So I think we have the same violence that you have seen when the white men went to the Americas, to recover what they call the new lands in Australia, in America, and all those places, and violently moved the local people and took over. This is the same thing that we are seeing today, and the same type of violence. So this is the history. This is what they call the Zionism, and this is why many of the nations in the West are buying into this to atone for their sins, and also to try and keep these people out. But at the time when the founder of this Zionism, Theodore, came up with, he found that he kept telling them, if we get that land, it will be an outpost of Western civilization against those people. And so this is why now you see the way the Americans and some of these countries think, Israel is everything, and so unfortunately, by the time the UN in 1947 decided to create, to allow to partition Israel between Palestinians and the Jews were occupying only 7% of the land, and their population were about 35-37%. 97% of the land belonged to the Palestinians. But then the British, who at the time had the mandate as a colonial power, that made sure that that the situation was changed, and the Palestinians were driven out and Israel was given the land. And this unfortunately is something that is documented in all the history. And so I'll mention later how the UN and all the resolutions support the struggle, just like all the other colonial peoples of the world.
Just remember, we will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.